Well, good morning. Thanks for coming to this important briefing. My name is Don Kearney, Director of Parks and Recreation. And I say this is an important briefing today because I hope we can rely on some of the media to help us emphasize the need for property owners in Sioux Falls to have a plan for their ash trees located on their private property. Since we discovered EAB in 2018, we've been talking about the death curve and how urban forests are affected by the rapid increase in dead ash trees as the infestation spreads and trees continue to die and decline over time. Once ash trees die, they do become a hazard. And our message today is to make sure that you have a plan for how you will address ash trees on your private property if you were not treating them. Since 2009, the Parks and Recreation Department has removed over 17,000 street trees at no cost to the property owners along the city streets, knowing that property owners would have their hands full managing and taking care of their own ash trees on their private property. Another 2,000 street trees are slated to be removed by the end of 2025. So as the city gets closer to completing our street tree removals, we will then transition to the natural areas within the park system. And the message today is that we now really need people to start removing ash trees on their private property sooner than later. We estimate there are currently 45,000 ash trees on private property in Sioux Falls. The number of ash trees that pose a risk to private property is rising. During our annual forest health survey in July, the forestry team issued 530 orders to remove for ash trees this year. This tripled from just 1 year ago when we issued 123 orders to remove. What concerns us is that some people think EAB was a temporary infestation and that it has somehow left the city. Today we're here to tell you EAB is here to stay, and we anticipate more and more trees will be identified for removal on private property. The number of trees could easily increase from 530 this year to double, triple, or even quadruple that number next year. One of the things we're trying to avoid is that we just don't want private property owners to be caught off guard, and that is why we're strongly encouraging them to be proactive. Removing trees is a large expense, and we don't want residents to be in a situation where their private trees are dead and they don't have the resources to be able to remove them. Dead ash trees, again, propose a significant safety risk if they're just left without attention. Because so many ash trees are still standing on private property, consider scheduling removal this fall if your budget allows, and if immediate removal isn't possible, prioritize it for next spring when maybe the resources you have are available. The other thing, cautionary statement, the longer that you wait to remove ash trees, an infested ash tree, the more expensive it becomes. Today, the removal is about $800 to $1,000 currently. In the coming years, we anticipate the removals to be more expensive because EAB makes the tree more dangerous to remove. In some communities, we've heard price tags of $5,000 all the way up to $20,000 to remove a tree because of the fragile state that those trees are in and the danger that it creates for the arborists that are removing it. We are proactively working with businesses and private property owners that have large infestations of EAB. For example, we're working with one apartment complex in northeastern Sioux Falls where we identified 21 ash trees, all that were in some state of decline. They were in a fortunate situation because 13 of the 21 trees they had happened to be along the street where the city came along and removed those as part of our street tree removal program. So they kind of got lucky, but they still have some work ahead of them. Another similar example, but on a private property, is we have a West Side resident that has 13 ash trees, again, all showing signs of decline. They are doing the smart thing by chipping away at it, removing a couple a year, and eventually trying to spread out the cost of the removals on their particular private property. Again, this could be a heavy financial burden depending on your situation, so make a plan and again, try to stay ahead of it. What can you do as a private property owner? If you have one or more ash trees and you're not treating them, start planning their removal. If your budget allows, consider scheduling removal this fall, and if not, prioritize for next spring. For your safety and peace of mind, always hire a trained professional familiar with EAB removal. And then we also have a list of certified arborists available at siouxfalls.gov/EAB, where those arborists can be sought out and can do a good job for you. So with that, I'd like to now turn it over to John Ball. John is the South Dakota Department of Ag Forest Health Specialist. John has vast experience in guiding communities on tree health and really has been a great partner with Sioux Falls and helped us formulate our EAB response plan. So, John, welcome.
Well, thank you. And I do have to begin that South Dakota, or Sioux Falls, South Dakota, has developed an incredible plan and has followed it perfectly. I remember in 2018 when I stood here and said EAB has now arrived in South Dakota, Sioux Falls already had a plan in place, a plan that they modified and enhanced and have followed since that moment. At the time, I told them, I said, if you follow this plan that you've developed, no one's going to thank you because they're not going to realize the problem that could have happened. And that's what's occurred. A lot of people think the insect is left. But what Sioux Falls has done has been spectacular, and in fact is a template now for other communities in our state and surrounding states. Dakota Dunes has followed it, Brookings has followed it, and what they're following is the planned removal of ash trees in anticipation of them dying from emerald ash borer. Why? Because nobody wants to wait until they have standing dead trees, which become a threat to the public and very expensive to remove. Well, at that same time, I told homeowners it's their turn to step up as well. And the remark that I made is your ash trees in your yard are like your children. Pick your favorites. The trees you like, now start to treat them to protect them from becoming infested. The trees you don't want, the ash trees that are overgrown or in a bad spot, remove them because they will become attacked. And many people in Sioux Falls stepped up and did that. In fact, so many ash trees were treated that first and second year, we had one of the highest rates in the country. I appreciate the fact that people stepped up and treated the tree in their front yard, the tree on their street, and have continued to treat them during this epidemic. And for those people, let me say, you're almost there. At that time in 2018, I said you're going to treat your trees every 2 years for 10 years. And then after that, the treatment period lengthens. And we're almost there. We're at year 6. You only have to do this 2 more times. And then we'll be able to stretch it out. So keep your eye on it. Keep doing it. We appreciate it. But for those that haven't treated their trees and have chose not to remove them, now is the time. The decision has been made for you. The option of treating is long since gone. If you've been treating your trees, continue to do so. If you haven't treated your trees, now's the time for removal. If your tree is standing dead, that there are no leaves on it anymore, or that it's died back more than a third, you should remove those as soon as possible. Ash dies and falls in an unpredictable manner with EAB. Sometimes they'll stand for 3 or 4 years standing dead. Other times they'll fall just from having somebody walk by them. They're that unpredictable. The wood becomes very brittle. Large branches will break. And we're talking still days, not windy days. Or the entire tree will fail at the base. So if you have a tree that a third of the canopy is gone, or that it's standing dead, that is one that you need to schedule now to be removed. If instead you have an ash tree you've not been treating that has some dieback to it, you find a couple of dead branches up there, or maybe just a little bit at the top, you have a little bit more time. Now, it is inevitable. Those trees will die. They have not been treated. But you can wait, if you have to, for another year or two. But let me also emphasize that the sooner you do this, the better. Why? Because once the tree does die, the cost of removals increase. They increase a tremendous amount. Costs that are $1,000 go to $5,000, $10,000. They can go to $20,000 to remove a standing dead ash tree. And that needs to be done by professionals. Why? Because sometimes the trees fail while you're cutting them, and you have to plan for that. And professionals that have worked on these trees sometimes utilize cranes, sometimes use special techniques. Why? Because they're running a risk just to remove them. But what if you do nothing? What if you say, well, I'll leave the standing dead trees. I've seen standing dead trees before, Stan. They haven't been attacked by emerald ash borer. Emerald ash borer dries out the wood. The trees often collapse at the base. And what's worse, and we're all learning from the Michigan experience, back when they didn't understand how these trees fail, sometimes they just fall across streets. Sometimes they've crushed cars. Sometimes they've hit people. In a 2-year time period in Michigan, they were able to identify 18 fatalities from people killed by trees falling in streets, on their cars or directly in front of their car as they were driving, or hitting them as they're walking down the street. So the concern is real. And so let me say again that the city of Sioux Falls has done a spectacular job of managing this problem. They've managed it so well, many people don't even realize there is a problem. And for homeowners, if you're treating your ash trees, please continue to do so. You're almost there when we can stretch that time period for treatments. But if you haven't done anything with your ash tree, and I understand we all procrastinate in that, the decision's been made for you. Now it's the time to start looking at removals. And as already been said, the sooner the better, because the only thing that's going to happen is the cost is going to increase, or far worse, that tree is going to fail and possibly hit someone. So we need to get to it now, start scheduling it this fall. So thank you.
Any questions?
Have you guys been seeing many dead trees in Sioux Falls?
Yes, I'll start out with the pictures that we're showing are really from Sioux Falls. One is from Canton. But yeah, if you go out to the north part of town, you'll find some that are almost completely dead at this point. Yes.
And what advice do you have for anyone planning to remove trees on their own?
That's easy. My advice is don't. And I'm quite serious about that. I know we have a lot of people that say, hey, I've cut down trees before. And yeah, that's probably true. But you haven't cut down a tree that's standing dead from being attacked by emerald ash borer. The wood gets very brittle. They can fail at the base while you're working at it. I'll give you 2 examples. One failed, not in Sioux Falls, where they merely threw a rope up in the tree to help pull it over. The minute the rope went over a branch and they tugged it, the whole tree collapsed. Another, they parked a truck up next to it to put an aerial lift into it, and the entire tree collapsed. Now, I also said these are unpredictable, which means one time you get lucky and the tree, you cut down the tree and the tree falls exactly where you want. But the other time you start cutting, the tree falls backwards because it collapsed. So this is not for someone who's not a professional. Do go out, go to the list, hire a professional tree company to do this work now.
Great, thank you.